the thing was that the Mormon church is definitely racist, obviously. But I grew up with the kind of racism, the nice racism of like, no, God created everybody equally. It's just so unfortunate that Black fathers aren't there for their families because, you know, families are so important. So it's like that kind of racism that at the time didn't strike me that way. The historical racism actually was not clear to me because people would say, oh, Mormons are racist, right? But within the Mormon church, they tell you, right, that the brainwashing is real. They tell you and they restrict which sources of information you can access. So they will like sort of from the time you're very, very young, tell you that if you ever encounter a point of view that is critical of the church, then that's anti-Mormon and they're lying. And so, you know, it wasn't until, well, I mean, you know, young adulthood that I was like, oh, actually, let me look into that. And then once I knew what to look for, it was there. Like I could have picked up a book off of my dad's bookshelf and read, you know, God, you know, that Black people were fence sitters before you know, who are being punished for a lack of loyalty to Jesus in the pre-existence. Like I could have found that in the book, but I wouldn't have known where to look for it. Yeah. Because anybody who told me to look for it, I would have discounted as a liar who is just trying to, you know, do Satan's bidding. But it's like once I knew where to look, then it was there and it was very clear.
So the fence sitting thing. Oh yeah, because they purposely hide it. I know that's what makes it so despicable too. Yeah, it's like so the fence sitting thing. I've heard of this. For those of you who may not be familiar, like tell me where I get this wrong, but I will get a lot wrong. But so the Mormons teach that there was like this celestial battle before human beings were human beings, and you had the good guys, you had the bad guys, and the souls, I guess, of white people. They chose to fight along the side of God, obviously, and then the souls of like Native Americans, they fought against God. And then the souls of Black people said, we're just going to wait to see who wins. And is that right? Or how did that work?
I'm not sure where the Native Americans fell, but the idea was pretty much the people who chose Jesus got to come to earth and were white. And the people who sided with Satan didn't get to come to earth. They're in hell. Oh. And they're with him. So they're the demons. And then people of color, specifically Black people, I don't remember what category other races would have fallen into. They just wouldn't take a side. So they couldn't be condemned to hell, but they get to come to earth, but they basically have to like suffer and like earn it.
Well, don't we all? I remember
logic when you think about it too hard. So
yeah, right. It's I remember thinking of the Native Americans because like there were Black people and brown people, and like if you had brown skin, you could like purify yourself to become whiter while you were on Earth, but Black were exempt from that. And I couldn't remember the reason. I thought maybe it had to do with the celestial battle at first, but who knows? I mean, it's all a bunch of nonsense anyway. But it's I talked to someone a while ago who was a Mormon who went to a Mormon wedding ceremony. Have you ever seen one of those? Are they as weird as?
So Mormon wedding ceremonies that take place inside the temple can only be attended by other Mormons who have passed like purity, you know, worthiness tests, including volunteering, serving for free. So in order to get into one of those ceremonies, you would have to have passed all the tests. So I've never been to one because I was never temple worthy. I mean, I was as a young woman, but in order to be temple worthy, you have to either go on a mission. There's a ceremony that has to take place, like an initiation that has to take place in the temple. So you got to pass all of these tests and everything, and like interviews and whatnot. But in order to like sort of initiate that ceremony, you have to either go on a mission. So it's like you do this before your mission, or you have to get married and you do it before your wedding. So if you don't do either of those, then you wouldn't like cross that threshold. So I never did. So I never had to wear the magic underwear.
Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad. Because like the magic underwear, I learned that you get like merit badges and stuff on them, like transmutation circles they put all over it for, right? Isn't that right? Isn't that?
Yeah, they're like little X's or circles or something. I think, I don't know. I never.
I cannot.
It's considered like they say it's not secret, it's sacred. But it's like I would like see these underwear, like my parents in like the wash, and like I would notice, but like I couldn't ask, they wouldn't tell me, you know.
That's so creepy. It's so weird. It's stuff. My favorite thing about Mormonism was reading about Joseph Smith, because man, like you read about Joseph Smith and I have a hard time being mad at this guy. I have a hard time because if everyone around me was that fucking stupid, I think I would be really tempted to do the same thing. And my two favorite Joseph Smith stories are, the first one is about the golden. Well, actually, they're both about the golden plates. And so, for those of you who don't know, Joseph Smith, I think Gabriel showed him some golden plates or something that had the Book of Mormon. Oh, what?
It was Moroni.
Moroni. Okay. Don't even know that.
The last Native American of his tribe.
Oh, it was the human.
Yes, I think so. So it was an angel. Was it a ghost? Yeah, I think so. It's been so long. I swear, I really. And it's incredible how much brain space just opens up for other things when you're not like preoccupied thinking about all these things. But
true.
Okay, keep going.
Oh, so he had the golden plates, and from the golden plates, which were written in like, you know, heavenly language or whatever, and Joseph Smith transcribed them, and someone wrote them. Well, because he read the plates, someone else wrote them, and. How it was written is really funny. So he sits like behind a curtain with the golden plates, and he reads from them, and has some dude in the church write out what he says. Mormons believe angels are resurrected. Oh, okay. Oh my God, I didn't know that. I didn't know angels were resurrected humans. Okay, that does make sense. So it does make sense what you said. All right, cool. Thank you, Steph. But he reads what's on the plates, and the other guy, you know, writes out the Book of Mormon. Now, this is obviously nonsense. Why is he hiding behind the curtain? Why can't anyone else see the plates? And you aren't the only one who thinks that, because that guy's wife thought the same thing. So she thought this was a scam. Like, she's the only smart person in the 19th century, it turns out. And so when the guy's not looking and he's finished the book, she steals the book. She steals it, just like hides. And so the guy goes, "Hey, what's up with?" Say what?
And they do it again, and then they
compare. She told him, "Look, if this guy is telling the truth, he should be able to replicate this book word for word, just like last time." And of course, he couldn't do it because he made it up. So Joseph Smith comes out and says, "Oh, I've received another revelation. It turns out those golden plates were incorrect. I've got a new set of golden plates, and we got to write it." And they fucking bought it. They believed it. And it's like, this lady is a hero, and she was just completely ignored, you know, using the most obvious logic imaginable. And the second thing about the golden plates is, of course, no one could see them but him. Not a red flag to anyone, apparently. And he would go around from, you know, city to city showing off the golden plates, but he had them covered in a sheet. And he would let people feel them. They could feel the golden plates. And this, I like, to this day, I've never been gobsmacked so hard after reading their testimonies, because if you read the testimonies from these people who said they felt the golden plates, like half of them say, yeah, it was like, you know, I don't know, 10 inches by 4 inches long each plate. And it kind of felt like 10. Like half of them said it felt like 10. I wonder why they felt like 10. It's just that it's so absurd. But look, if the people were buying it, of course he did that. Like, why not?
Yeah. I think there was I think I heard that there was a real obsession that people would have at the time. It was a religious revival. And also people were really fascinated with stories coming out of South America. So I think he kind of like melded those two things together. And the thing about like with the absurdity, right? It reminds me of Trump. It's like, if you do like an absurd con, lots of people aren't going to believe you, but you're not trying to convince lots of people. You're just looking for the couple of dupes, just those couple. And then if you get, and then, you know, going forward, if you get people from the time they're babies, like it's easy to indoctrinate a baby.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then they set up a system whereby in order to like be eligible for the dating pool in your community, basically, you have to go on a mission, which is like, again, like creates this sunk cost of like, well, I put 2 years of my life in the church. And on the mission, people are so hostile to the missionaries because nobody wants Everybody's still falling for this, but nobody wants to hear them. And so they spend 2 years in this us, them, the only safe place is the church, the only safe people are church people. And then they come back and then they're in for life, and then they have babies, and those babies, they get them from childhood. That's how it works.
Have you run across the sunk cost thing from people who, what's that again? You also pay your money. It was crazy to find that out. Yeah. Couldn't believe that all the money they have and they make you pay. That's like, even Protestant, like, we didn't have the balls to do stuff like that. Like, we would work together and try to get the money out. That's crazy. But the sunk cost thing. And
then it's also forced poverty. Like, even if you had money, like you don't pay for your own mission. I think it's like you send in your money to a giant mission fund, and then that money gets like re-allotted to people based on like the cost of living of the area that they're in. And so like, and it's not enough. So it's like you're isolated. You can't be with your friends or family. You're constantly monitored. It's very much a Handmaid's Tale situation where, you guys are the other person's surveillance, and you don't have enough money to be comfortable. So it's, and it's your own money. You've paid to be there. You're spending 2 years.
That's terrible. That's terrible. But I do see how it builds the bonding thing. I talk about that a lot with like military service, that, when you're with someone for a group of people for a year, 6 months, and you're in terrible conditions, you grow incredibly tight with those people and the organization that you work for. So I see how that works. But with the sunk cost thing,
they switch up your partner every 6 weeks or so.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, they don't want people getting close.
You figure they'd want them to get close. Oh, that would.
If you got cool with your partner, then you guys might like decide to stretch the rules a little bit. But if you have a new partner every, pretty frequently, then you have to reset. And it's like, you don't know how strict this person is going to be.
That's because I was thinking that once you said it, I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. Because like when you're in those circles, you meet someone who's like, okay, how cool is this person? Like, how cool? You don't know. And it takes, roughly 6 weeks to find out, exactly how cool they are. So I do get that. But when you're talking about how the sunk cost thing is that when I left my religion and like belief in God altogether, like 12, 13 years ago. And I didn't tell anyone for a long time, but I became very vocal about it. Kind of an asshole, honestly. Kind of regret a lot about what I was doing. But over the years, I've gotten a lot of like messages from people, and they'll say, hey, TJ, listen, all the stuff that you're saying, or like, it makes a lot of sense. And like, you really made me reconsider a lot of this, but I'm married. I've got, 3 kids, and like all my family is Christian, or I'm a deacon, or I'm a preacher, and I've been one for years now. And this is all I know. I get this thing. Like, really, it's you've created a situation where it's impossible for you to go back in a lot of ways. Not everyone switches every 6 weeks, so a pair of missionaries may stay together. Okay. Still not. But yeah, have you run across anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the term I've heard people use is that they're being held hostage. I don't know if it's so true for other sects of Christianity. I would expect so, but in Mormonism, if you leave the church, then you give up your ability to be with your family in eternity. And so essentially, if you don't pretend, then your family is going to be like, oh my God, you're abandoning us. Not just like now, like, but in eternity. And so people describe feeling held hostage. Yep.
That's a weird like version of Pascal's wager. Like I got like in a weird way. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's saying you can't leave the church, otherwise God will punish you. It's like, God already knows what you think. Like, God knows if you're just doing this on a technicality. Why pretend? I don't know. It's so toxic.
Your wife might not know. Your kids might not know. And so if you can, I don't know how that works. The logic doesn't logic once you think about it.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Like I've gotten to the point where, listen, I'm not like antagonistic, like unnecessarily towards people who believe in God or anything. I'm not. It's ridiculous to do that, because most people do, and most of them are good people, and you have to work with them anyway. If you just push everybody aside, you're not going to get anything done. But man, when it comes to stuff like that, I will speak out against it in a heartbeat, because people are ruining, like, okay, this is a friend of mine. I remember asking him a while ago. I asked him if he still goes to church. Like, we were friends, decades ago and everything. We still are. And I asked him, I was like, so, like, how's your family at church and everything? And I know you still believe in God and all that. He goes, oh, yeah. He's like, well, I still believe and I go to church, but I don't go quite as often anymore. I was like, oh, why is that? He goes, well, it's softball season, and my daughter has a lot of games and stuff, and so we travel a lot for it. And I didn't say anything, but I was like, bro, do you realize what you just said? Like, you just said that capital G God, the creator of the universe, like God Almighty, is less important to you than your daughter's softball game. Mm-hmm. And you know what? It is more important than your daughter's softball. It is more important than God, because your daughter is real, and that connection is true. But a lot of people go the exact opposite way, where they're like, oh, hey, look, I gotta serve God at the detriment of my family. It's like, no, please don't do that. It's horrible to see. I hate it.
Yeah. It is sad. It's really sad.
It's so the deconstruction started like with you're meeting new people, kind of like, so your deconstruction for politically and religious came like around the same time then, right?
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now I recognize, obviously, Mormonism more so than other, perhaps because, the focus on like America, that they're really closely related. So once the church wasn't true, then maybe America was not the center of the world. And, the fact that I married an immigrant, was like, oh, they're, it's just like the more your worldview opens.
Yes. The exact same thing. Well, it happened to me a little slower. At first, it was the religion. And then I began to realize, oh, man, a lot of these beliefs I have are, directly tied to religion. Because this is like what people don't understand when you're talking to a lot of conservatives, that they actually don't care how the policy affects reality. They don't. It's like, that's why like telling them stuff like Medicare for all would save a lot of lives and it's a lot cheaper. They don't care. Socialism is bad. And so it doesn't really matter. And so once I figured out that, a lot of my religious beliefs were nonsense, I looked at my political beliefs and just started evaluating them on the basis of their own merit. Like, oh, okay, this doesn't make any sense. And I don't know, that's it's fun to watch here. So about your oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I remember, I have a memory of being in high school and writing a paper. And I remember I wrote it, I think, on the death penalty. And I was going to write this paper on why we should, execute more people. And in researching for the paper, I was having such a hard time finding supporting evidence for my argument. And I was like, where is the evidence? It's like, I knew my position was so sure, then why couldn't I back it up? Like, I don't think that was like, I don't think that changed my mind, but I remember that now. Like, yeah, it happens. Yeah.
I wasn't writing a paper on the death penalty, but I had the same, I guess we all come to that eventually. Cause look, to this day, if you ask me how I feel about the death penalty, yeah, it feels right to me. I gotta tell you, it does. Like, it does. It's like you murder someone and you forfeited your right to live. That, I gotta say, it makes sense to me. Yes. However, like, when you look at the evidence for this, you're like, okay, there's no evidence anywhere that this works, that this decreases murders, that this makes people act right. No, in fact, it's the exact opposite. Yeah. Which is so counterintuitive. And like you look further back in history, we executed people for more and more things. Like these days, it's just murder. But in fact, our last capital execution for something other than murder was like in the 1960s. Like it's pretty recent that we stopped executing people for things other than murder. But then, man, you go back, further and further in human history, you're getting executed for, insulting the king or something. We were executed. And guess what? There were way more murders then than there are now. So yeah, like if you ask me like what position I'm going to support, yeah, I'm anti-death penalty. And, also that's not even taking into account, like 10, 15% of the time it's the wrong person or something. Like, yeah, you really can't hold on to this.
I mean, what is the statistic that the police solve? Like, is it like 3% of crimes that like potentially like more than 1 in 10 people that we execute, like just
it was over 1 in 10.
It's like, that's nuts.